Okay, this has to be one of the dumbest landlord stories I've seen in a while. A bill in Oregon would make it so that landlords could no longer evict people who are pregnant for a year after the child was born. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have quite the interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the state of Oregon. So this shouldn't surprise you. It shouldn't surprise you that it's absolute idiocy, okay? Now, just from the title of the article alone, I thought, man, this is the dumbest story that I've seen in quite a while. A bill that would make it so that landlords couldn't evict people if they are pregnant or if the child is less than a year old. So, what kind of action would this encourage? Would this perhaps encourage a lady to just keep having babies so she never gets evicted and doesn't have to pay rent? Maybe. And I know what people are thinking. They're like, oh, nobody would do that. Yeah, well, just look at the welfare queens who kept having babies so they could keep getting their welfare checks. And that's exactly what this is, okay? This will turn into a disaster for landlords. Now, I don't think this is actually going to pass, but this is the kind of idiocy that you're seeing out of the very, very far left progressives, okay? They believe that, you know what, the landlord's evil. They need to be the social welfare provider for every poor person out there, and that's their job. They don't get any choice out of it. Their investment goes to making sure that people are housed, whether they can afford to live in your unit or not. Okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So, first of all, do you think this sort of bill would actually pass? Okay? State of Oregon wants to make it so that landlords can't evict pregnant women. Oh, I say pregnant women, but the article actually says pregnant people. Now, I honestly don't know anyone other than women who can have babies, but I mean, that's what the article says, okay? So, the second question I have for you is, do you think that people would take advantage of such a law? Go ahead and put a comment in the comment section down below. Let's get into it. This article is coming from OregonLive.com, and it says, bill would prevent landlords from evicting low-income and pregnant Oregonians who fail to pay rent. Let's see what it says. A bill that would prohibit landlords from evicting many low-income and pregnant Oregonians and offer rental assistance through the first year of the baby's life is up for consideration in the Oregon legislature. The bill would also offer a year of rental assistance to expectant residents or new parents at risk of becoming homeless. Many of Senate Bill 690's details have yet to be worked out, including the number of people who would benefit and who precisely would be obligated to foot the bill. Democratic Senator Lisa Reynolds, a pediatrician and chief backer of the bill, asked rental property owners to be patient as she works with government agencies to work out funding streams. A pediatrician. So you're a doctor, okay, and you're not, like educated enough to figure out that this isn't going to work. Okay, so then you know that this isn't going to pass. There's no way that this is going to pass, even in a place like Oregon. So what's the point of putting up such a bill, okay? A feel-good measure? Oh, see, I really do care about the fates of women and children. Shut the heck up, okay? You're just being an idiot. Okay, virtue signaling, acting like a complete moron, and nobody believes for 1 second that this is a good idea. Nobody. Okay, yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of broke people who are pregnant who are like, yeah, I can live for free. Yeah, those are the only people who are looking forward to this sort of legislation. And the landlords, the property owners, you're talking about rental assistance. How much rental assistance? Where is the money coming from? Are we talking about taxing the taxpayers additional money in order to pay so that a whole bunch of people can have as many babies as they want? That's dumb. Okay, absolutely dumb. And I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with this nonsense whatsoever. But anyway, let me continue. Landlord, you will be made whole with back pay, Reynolds said during a Senate Rules Committee hearing last week. We're going to ask you not to evict the pregnant people, like I said, pregnant people, and babies that fall into this category. The bill would move pregnant people and new parents to the front of the line for federal money meant for struggling Oregonians. It would also allocate $20 million of state general fund money over the next 2 years for rent assistance and supportive services. Maybe they should just raise the property taxes up to like 20% to pay for this, huh? That would work, right? Yeah, or maybe we can raise the sales taxes and, like raise sales tax, raise the property tax, and that way these pregnant people will never have to pay rent again. Or this is probably what would happen if something like this was to pass. There wouldn't be any funding for the rental assistance, yet the landlords would still be expected to house these people and they would take the loss. That's probably what would happen, okay? That's what we saw happen with the pandemic eviction moratoriums, and that's what would happen with this sort of law. There's never going to be enough money to be able to pay for all the freeloaders who want to live for free, okay? In order to qualify, soon-to-be parents or parents of infants would need to be eligible for and receiving services funded by the Oregon Health Plan and Medicaid. They'd also need to inform the owners of their rental properties of the situation. Reynolds, who lives in the Oak Hills area, pointed to the distressing rates of unsheltered homelessness among families with children. She said money spent on intervening in the lives of low-income children has the biggest impact the younger they are. It's obviously time to do something very different, Reynolds said. We just think it's really important to keep babies housed. Keeping babies housed, right? So a lot of the times, and this is one of the arguments that I've always said when it comes to the homelessness situation, right? Homelessness is not the problem. It is a symptom of a problem, but it is not the problem in and of itself, okay? So the people who are homeless, and we'll leave the chronically homeless people who are mentally ill and drug addicted out of the situation, right? So let's talk about the other people, these families with children, maybe they're not drug addicted, etc. So what is their problem, okay? And their real problem has to do with, one, single parent households, right? Because a lot of these people, they're having children outside of wedlock, and that is causing a huge amount of financial difficulty on them, okay, these families. So they oftentimes fall into the homelessness because of that, okay? And then if that is a huge issue, then we need to really focus on trying to make sure that people are getting married, making sure that people are taking care of their children if they're not getting married, by providing for them financially, okay? And also making sure that people aren't having children that they can't afford. I mean, how do we do that? Just education. Education, that's what I say. And stop continuing to perpetuate cultures that think that, hey, you know what? Me being a single mom ain't a big deal. Well, you know what? It can cause a lot of issues for, yourself and for your children. Okay? And it's not an ideal situation. That's the truth. Okay? Now, obviously, the best situation would be having both parents in the household, but we know that's not always going to happen. And we created these programs, other programs, social welfare programs, to help people hopefully be able to make better choices going on into the future. However, as I've mentioned many times before, these programs are being abused, and they are depending on landlords such as myself, such as the millions of other landlords across the country, to essentially provide social services for these people. That's not our responsibility, okay? Anyway, let me know what you think of this whole situation and put a comment in the comment section down below.